Welcome back to Salty Slumber Stories. A New Year's Special, Part 1. When Time Was a Tide. Where history drifts like a slow current, where old words creak like rigging in a night wind, and where we let the mind sail gently toward sleep. Tonight we do not rush. Tonight we lower the sail and allow ourselves to drift. Because tonight, as the world quietly turns the page to a new year, we are not just welcoming 2026. We are stepping into a question as old as humanity itself. What is time, and more curiously, who decided how we measure it? So find a comfortable berth, let the day's weight slip overboard, and imagine yourself on calm, dark water, the sea barely breathing beneath the hull. Our voyage begins long before calendars, long before numbers, long before the first year was ever named. Before calendars, when time was felt, not counted. There was a time when no one knew the year, no one marked dates, no one circled holidays in red ink, no one argued over leap days. Time was not written, it was watched. Early humans did not ask what day it was. They asked whether the sun was returning, whether the animals were coming back, whether the river would freeze again. Time was not a line, it was a cycle, like the tide. The moon rose and fell, the sun climbed and sank, stars wheeled overhead like a great celestial compass. To ancient people, time behaved less like a clock and more like the sea. Predictable, yes, but never obedient. You could learn its patterns, but you could not command it. Fire, food, and the first measurements. The first calendars were not philosophical, they were practical. If you planted too early, the frost would take your crop. Too late, and winter would starve you. Time became survival. So people began marking moons with scratches on bone, knots on rope, stones stacked and restacked near the hearth. Each mark said the same thing: we survived another cycle. These early systems were fragile, local, and deeply human. They belonged to families, to villages, to coastlines and valleys. And like good seamanship, they were passed down by memory, not paper. Coastlines and calendars. It is no coincidence that some of the earliest timekeepers lived by the sea. The ocean teaches patience, it teaches repetition. It teaches that the same wave never returns, but the pattern always does. Fishing peoples learn to read time and tides. Sailors learn to trust stars more than clocks. And far to the north, where the sea turns to iron half the year, another way of measuring time was forming, a colder way, a harsher way, but a deeply enduring one. The Norse way of time. The Norse did not live by months the way we understand them. They lived by light and dark. In the far north, spring does not arrive gently. It comes suddenly, like a breaking wave. Winter dominates, summer flashes. So the Norse divided the year into only two seasons, winter and summer. No tidy transitions, no gentle bookkeeping, just endurance and reward. Their calendar followed the moon, but bowed to the sun. A lunisolar system, adjusted when needed by observation rather than decree. If the seasons drifted, they corrected them, not with proclamations, but with experience. Months that floated like driftwood. Norse months did not begin on fixed dates. They began when the moon was ready. A new moon meant a new count, a turning point. Time was not locked to a wall, it floated. Much like a ship waiting for the right tide, months began when nature allowed them to begin. And when the moon's count slipped too far from the sun, they added a month, quietly, no announcement, no reform, just correction. Runes, wood, and memory. The Norse did not trust parchment, they trusted wood. Time was carved into staffs, often made of birch or pine, marked with runes and symbols. These were not calendars for everyone, they were calendars for those who knew how to read them. Each mark might mean a feast, a market, a sacred night, or a warning. The staff did not explain itself. Like the sea, it expected knowledge. Feasts, not dates. The Norse did not celebrate numbers. They celebrated moments. Yule did not happen on December 25th. It happened when darkness peaked, when survival had been earned, when the promise of returning light felt real. Time was emotional. It carried fear, hope, relief, and this mattered more than accuracy. Why this matters? Because calendars do not just measure time, they tell us what matters. They tell us, when to stop working and when to gather, when to believe something sacred is happening. Changing a calendar means changing meaning, and this is where time stops being gentle and starts becoming political. A quiet turn toward power. As villages grew into kingdoms and faiths grew into institutions, time stopped being local, and someone had to decide whose version of time was correct. But that story of power, religion, and control belongs to the next leg of our voyage. So for now, let the Norse fires dim, let the moon slide behind cloud, let the tide turn slowly beneath you. We have many miles yet to sail. A New Year's Special, Part 2. Gods in the days, salt in the names. The tide turns quietly now. The fires of the north still glow behind us, but ahead, the sea opens wider. And with it comes something subtle, something we still speak every day, often without knowing why. Names. Because while calendars may change, names have a way of surviving the wreck. When gods became days, Imagine a Norse longship at sea. The wind is steady, the oars rise and fall like breathing. The horizon is empty, only water and sky. Out here, time is not counted in hours. It is counted in days, and each day belongs to a force greater than man. To the Norse, the week was not abstract, it was inhabited. Each day carried a presence, a god, a temperament, a mood. Time itself had personality. Wednesday, Odin's Day. The Norse called him Odin, All-Father, Wanderer, god of wisdom, sacrifice, and storms of the mind. Wednesday was Wednesday, Odin's Day, a fitting choice. Odin was not a god of comfort, he was a god of seeking. He hung himself from the world tree to gain knowledge. He traded an eye for wisdom. He wandered disguised among men. Wednesday, even now, often feels restless, a midpoint, a searching day. The Norse would have understood that feeling immediately. Thursday, Thor's Day. If Odin was the mind, Thor was the arm, thunderer, protector, hammer wielder. Thursday was Thorstager, Thor's Day, a day of strength, of endurance. Farmers favored it, sailors trusted it. Thor guarded humanity from chaos, from giants, from storms, from the breaking of order. Even today, Thursday carries weight. It feels solid. A good day to work, a good day to push through. That is not coincidence. Friday, Frigg's Day. Friday belonged to Frigg, queen of the gods, weaver of fate, keeper of the household. Friday was Friadager, Frigg's Day, a day of preparation, of gathering, of tending what matters. In Norse homes, Friday evenings were quieter. The work of the week eased. The hearth became central. Does that sound familiar? It should. Saturday and Sunday, a blending of worlds. Saturday came from Roman Saturn. Sunday belonged to the sun. The Norse did not erase these days. They absorbed them, like sailors adopting foreign rigging when it worked better. This blending would become a pattern because the Norse were not rigid, they were adaptive. How Norse time survived conquest. When Christianity arrived in the North, it did not come gently. Kings converted first, politics followed faith, and the old gods were pushed aside. But time is harder to conquer. You can burn temples, you can rename feasts, but you cannot easily rewrite how people feel a day. So the church compromised, gods became saints, feasts became holidays, but the structure remained. The week stayed 7 days. The rhythm stayed intact because farmers still planted, sailors still sailed, and cows still needed milking, regardless of theology. The runic calendar meets the cross. Runic calendars didn't disappear overnight, they evolved. Saints replaced gods on the staffs. Crosses replaced runes. but the marks stayed in the same places. Midwinter remained midwinter. Harvest remained harvest. This was not rebellion, it was continuity. Sailors, trade, and shared time. The Vikings were not only raiders, they were traders, and trade requires shared time. A market day must be agreed upon. A sailing season must align. As Norse ships reached Britain, Ireland, and beyond, their sense of time traveled with them, not imposed, but carried like salt in the hull. Why these names still matter. When you say Wednesday, you are speaking Odin's name. When you say Thursday, you are invoking thunder. When you say Friday, you are echoing a hearth fire kept alive over 1,000 years ago. The Norse did not win history by force, they won by persistence. Time is memory. Calendars tell us who once mattered, even when their temples are gone, even when their stories fade. Time remembers, and it carries those memories quietly, like a tide that never stops returning. A drifting pause. Let the days lose their edges. You are not behind, you are not late, you are exactly where the tide has brought you. And when you are ready, we will sail onward into the great calendar wars of empires, popes, and power, where time itself became a battlefield. A New Year's Special, Part 3. When time became law. The sea grows quieter now. The longships fade into mist behind us, their gods still whispering in the names of days. But ahead, the shoreline hardens. Stone replaces wood, law replaces memory, and time, once guided by moonlight and observation, begins to wear a uniform. When empires needed order. Empires cannot live by local time. An empire needs schedules, taxes, marching seasons, court dates. The Romans understood this deeply. They ruled not only land, but coordination. An army that marches on the wrong day starves. A tax collected late weakens power. A festival out of sync undermines authority. So Rome did what empires always do. It standardized time. From tides to tables. Before Rome, many calendars drifted. Months slipped. Seasons crept. But Rome wanted certainty. Not the soft certainty of sailors reading stars, but the hard certainty of stone inscriptions and decrees. The Roman calendar was hammered into shape. Months were named, days were counted. Time became something you could point to, and more importantly, something you could enforce. The Julian turn. By the time of Julius Caesar, Rome's calendar was broken. Political manipulation had crept in. Officials added or removed days to extend power. Years stretched or shrank for convenience. Time had become corrupt. So Caesar, soldier, ruler, reformer, did something radical. He reset time. The Julian calendar aligned the year with the sun. it was elegant, predictable, and for the first time in European history, time felt stable, like a harbor protected from shifting sandbars. A small error, a long shadow. But even a perfect-looking compass can drift. The Julian calendar miscalculated the solar year by just 11 minutes. 11 minutes feels harmless, but over centuries, it became days. Spring slid backward. Holy days drifted away from their meaning. The equinox no longer arrived on time, and this mattered deeply to one institution above all others: the church and sacred time. Christianity did not inherit a calendar, it inherited responsibility. Holy days were not optional. Easter, especially, had to occur at the right moment, after the equinox, after the full moon. But the calendar no longer matched the sky, and so the church faced a problem, not of faith, but of astronomy. When time became theological, correcting the calendar was not just practical, it was spiritual. If the church could not define sacred time, its authority weakened. So scholars studied stars, mathematicians counted days, and eventually a decision was made. Time would be corrected, even if people resisted. The days that vanished. When the new calendar arrived, it did not arrive gently. Days were removed. Entire chunks of time simply disappeared. People went to sleep on one date and woke up nearly 2 weeks later. No sunrise in between, no memory, just gone. Imagine losing days of your life, not to sleep, but to decree. Resistance and riots. People did not accept this quietly. Some believed their lives had been shortened. Others believed wages were stolen. Still others saw it as religious tyranny. In ports and villages, protests flared. Give us back our days. Time had become personal again. Why this mattered so much? Because calendars do more than tell time. They tell us when we are paid, when we rest, when we worship, when we remember. Changing the calendar changes life itself, and life resists sudden change, like a tide crashing against an unfamiliar shore. Northern eyes watching from afar. In the north, adoption was slow. Protestant lands delayed. Remote regions ignored decrees. Farmers trusted the sun more than Rome. Fishermen trusted ice more than ink. Time, once again, moved at different speeds. A quiet shift. Eventually, practicality won. Trade demanded alignment, navigation demanded precision, and slowly, quietly, the new calendar spread. Not by faith alone, but by economics. Ships need schedules, ports need agreement, time bends toward money. A moment of stillness. So here we are, time now printed, aligned, numbered. But beneath it, The old rhythms still hum. The moon still pulls the tide. Winter still darkens early. Light still returns. No calendar has ever changed that. When you're ready, we'll sail onward into revolutions that tried to erase time itself and failed. A New Year's Special, Part 4. When time was broken on purpose. The sea is darker now, not stormy, just deep. This is where certainty begins to fail, where people stop merely adjusting time and start trying to control it. When time became a weapon, by the late 18th century, Europe had changed. Kings trembled, crowds gathered, old orders cracked. And when revolutions rise, they do not stop at thrones, they come for time itself. Because if you want to create a new world, you must first destroy the old one's calendar. The French Revolutionary Calendar. In revolutionary France, the calendar was declared guilty, too religious, too royal, too old. So the revolutionaries erased it. They renamed the months: windy month, rainy month, harvest month. Poetic names, earthy names. They replaced saints with crops. Weeks were replaced with 10-day cycles. No Sunday, no rest day as people knew it. Time was rational now, mathematical, perfect, on paper. Why it failed? Humans do not sleep in base 10. Bodies rebelled. Workers collapsed. Farmers ignored it. Markets drifted back to old rhythms. The sea does not care how you name the wind. After 12 years, the calendar was abandoned. Time returned to its old shape. Russia tries again. More than a century later, another revolution tried the same thing. The Soviet Union rejected religious time. Weeks were broken, rest days staggered, factories ran continuously, families no longer shared days off. Efficiency rose briefly, loneliness rose faster, time fractured social life, and so it failed. The lesson no one escapes. You can legislate clocks, but you cannot legislate human rhythm. Calendars succeed when they cooperate with biology, astronomy, culture. They fail when they fight them. War and time. War accelerates time. Factories shift schedules. Rations alter meals. Night becomes work. But even war does not rewrite calendars permanently, because after war, people want familiar rhythms, normal days. Time becomes healing. Economics, the quiet ruler. Religion once ruled calendars, then kings, now commerce. Global trade requires synchronization. Ships depart on schedules, markets open together, time zones align. The modern calendar survives because it is useful, not because it is perfect. A moment to breathe. Listen to the water. It has not changed. No revolution ever altered the tide. No empire ever rewrote the moon. Time reforms always return to what already works. One last stretch remains, where all of this meets the present, and the new year waits on the horizon. A New Year special, Part V. Why January 1? The water feels steadier now. The great experiments are behind us, the broken calendars, the revolutions that tried to bend time into straight lines. What remains is quieter, more familiar. This is the stretch of sea where time stops being argued over and starts being accepted. When the world had to agree, by the 19th century, the world was shrinking, not in distance, but in connection. Steamships crossed oceans on schedules. Telegraphs carried messages faster than the sun. Railways demanded clocks that agreed with one another. A port could no longer live by its own noon. If one harbor marked time differently, ships missed tides, cargo spoiled, money vanished. Time became a language of trade, and trade demands fluency. January was not inevitable. January did not begin as the start of the year. For many cultures, the year began in spring, harvest, midwinter, the return of light. Even in Europe, New Year's Day shifted for centuries. Some celebrated it in March, others at Easter, others at Christmas. January was simply convenient. It aligned with Roman administration. It fit fiscal cycles. It sat cleanly between solstice and spring, not sacred, practical. The power of paper. Governments loved January. Budgets reset cleanly, taxes aligned, military service could be counted. Time was no longer a story told by elders. It was written, stamped, filed, and once time lived on paper, it stayed there. The last holdouts. Some places resisted. They kept old New Year's, old feast days, old rhythms. But resistance requires isolation, and isolation was ending. Ports connected coasts, railroads connected continents. Eventually, alignment won. Not through force, but through fatigue. What we lost and kept. In standardizing time, something faded. Local calendars disappeared. Seasonal celebrations narrowed. Moon counting became rare. But something remained. We still pause at year's end. We still reflect. We still hope. Calendars may tell us when, but humans decide why. The modern New Year. Midnight is arbitrary. The earth does not notice it. The stars do not pause. And yet we gather, we count down, we breathe together. This is not science, it is ritual, and rituals matter. On Norse Echo. The Norse did not count seconds. They watched darkness retreat. They welcomed light slowly, patiently, without fireworks. In some quiet way, we still do the same. Drifting toward the present. So here we are, on the edge of a new year. Our calendar is not perfect. It never was, but it is shared. And sharing time is how humans stay connected. One final stretch remains, a gentle harbor where the past rests and the future arrives softly. A New Year's Special, Part 6. The harbor of the new year. The sea is calm now, not empty, just resting. The long voyage through time is nearly complete, and ahead lies a quiet harbor, its lights low, its waters deep and still. This is where journeys end and where new ones begin. Time comes full circle. We began tonight before calendars, before numbers, before names. We followed time as it moved through firelight and frost, through gods and kings, through revolutions that tried to break it. And we arrive now in the present, carrying all of it with us. Every calendar that came before still echoes here, in the week you live inside, in the holidays you recognize, in the simple act of knowing what day it is. Time is layered, like sediment beneath the sea. What a calendar really is. A calendar is not truth, it is a truce. An agreement between the sky, the seasons, and human needs. It says, let us all agree just enough to live together. That is all it has ever been. The Norse would have understood this moment. The Norse did not celebrate at midnight. They would have waited, watched, listened. They would have felt the year turning, not sharply, but like a tide easing in another direction. To them, the new year was not an event, it was a recognition. Light is returning, survival continues. That was enough. What we do now. Tonight, we light screens instead of fires. We watch numbers instead of stars, but the feeling is the same. We pause, we take stock, we hope quietly that what comes next is gentler. Welcoming 2026. So here it is, the year 2026. Not a command, not a promise, just another turning of the great wheel. It will bring ordinary days, unexpected ones, some hard, some kind. And you will meet them one tide at a time. The final drift. Now, there is nothing more to measure, no date to reach, no hour to keep. Just breath and quiet and the slow, ancient comfort of knowing. Time has carried you here, and it will carry you forward. Good night from Salty Slumber Stories. Sleep with a steady heart. And welcome to 2026.